I should have stopped eating when I realized the turkey had already been carved. I was alone in the kitchen when I noticed it. The knife was still on the counter. The roasting pan was still warm. And there was a clean slice missing from the turkey.
I hadn't touched it. Everyone else had gone to bed about an hour earlier. I remember standing there with my fork in my hand, staring at the kitchen counter, trying to convince myself I had forgotten. It was Thanksgiving night. My family had spent the entire evening at our house, and after dinner, everyone had eaten dessert, watched television, and slowly disappeared upstairs. I had stayed awake because I wanted to finish cleaning. Nothing unusual had happened during dinner. At least, nothing I noticed. But when I looked at that turkey, I suddenly remembered something my sister had said earlier. She had asked, "Did anyone else hear someone in the kitchen?" I had laughed because I thought she was talking about me. She said she wasn't. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Now I did. I put the fork down. Then I heard a cabinet close behind me. Hard. I spun around. Every cabinet was shut. I checked the hallway. Empty. I stood there listening. Nothing. Then I heard 3 slow footsteps from the other side of the kitchen. I couldn't see anyone. I backed toward the counter. The footsteps stopped. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. I waited another few seconds. Then the kitchen light flickered. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam moved across the floor. Nothing. I told myself I was exhausted. That was the first explanation. It wouldn't be the last. I walked through the house, checking every room. My brother was asleep upstairs. My sister was asleep in another room. My friend had fallen asleep on the couch. Everyone was there. Everyone except the person I couldn't explain. I went back downstairs. The turkey was still sitting on the counter. I stared at it. Then I noticed something underneath the roasting pan. A folded piece of paper. I was certain it hadn't been there before. I picked it up. There was only 1 sentence written on it. I already checked upstairs. I stood completely still. The handwriting wasn't familiar. I looked toward the staircase. For some reason, I suddenly didn't want to go upstairs. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Then someone knocked on the back door. 3 times. Not loud, just deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I nearly dropped my phone. The back door had a large glass window, but the curtains were closed. I didn't move toward it. Another knock came. This one was softer. I whispered, "Who's there?" Nothing. I waited. Then I heard a voice from outside. It sounded like my brother. "Open the door." I froze. My brother was upstairs. I knew that. I had just seen him asleep. The voice came again. "Open the door." It sounded exactly like him. I stepped backward. Then I heard something scrape against the glass, slowly, like a fingernail. I ran upstairs. I woke my brother. He sat up immediately. "What?" I told him someone was outside. He looked confused. Then he heard the knocking. 3 slow knocks. His face changed. He got out of bed. We went downstairs together. The back door was still locked. Nobody was outside. My brother opened the curtain. The yard was empty. He opened the door. Cold air came in. There were no footprints. The ground outside was damp from rain earlier that evening. If someone had been standing there, I should have seen something. There was nothing. My brother looked at me. Maybe it was a branch. There isn't a tree near the door. He didn't answer. We locked the door again. Then my brother noticed something on the floor. A wet footprint. Inside the house. It was directly behind me. I stared at it. My brother stared at it. Neither of us said anything. There was only 1 footprint. No trail. Just 1. We checked the rest of the house. Nothing. My brother told me to go upstairs. I refused. I didn't want to be alone. We stayed downstairs until almost 3 in the morning. Nothing else happened. Eventually, exhaustion won. I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up because someone touched my shoulder. I opened my eyes. Nobody was there. I sat up so fast that my neck hurt. The television was off. The house was completely silent. Then I noticed the kitchen light was on. I knew I had turned it off. I walked toward the kitchen. The refrigerator door was open. I stopped.
Cold air was spilling across the floor. I hadn't opened it. I slowly closed it. That's when I noticed something inside. A glass container of leftover turkey had been moved from the bottom shelf to the top shelf. I had put it on the bottom. I knew that because I had written the date on the lid. The lid was missing. I looked around the kitchen. Then I heard breathing, right behind me. Slow, close. I turned around. Nobody. I stepped backward. My shoulder hit the refrigerator. Something fell from the top of it. A small metal object hit the floor. I jumped. It was an old key. I didn't recognize it. I picked it up. There was a tiny piece of tape wrapped around it. On the tape were 2 words. Basement door. I didn't even remember having a basement door. Our house had a small storage area beneath the stairs, but it had always been locked. My brother had the key. At least I thought he did. I woke him again. He was angry this time. What now? I showed him the key. His expression changed. He took it from my hand. I've never seen this. Didn't you have the key to the storage door? Yeah. Where is it? He checked his wallet, then his nightstand, then his jacket. Nothing. He looked at me. I lost it months ago. We went downstairs. The storage door was at the end of the hallway. I had walked past it hundreds of times. I had never noticed how old the lock looked. My brother put the new key into it. It turned immediately. The door opened. The smell hit me first. Dust, damp wood, something faintly sweet underneath. We turned on the light. There were boxes everywhere, old holiday decorations, broken furniture, things nobody had touched in years. Then my brother stopped. There was a small cardboard box sitting in the middle of the floor. It hadn't been there before. I knew that because we had moved several boxes earlier that afternoon. The cardboard box was open. Inside were photographs. I picked up the first one. It showed our house, but the photograph looked old. Much older than the house should have been. I picked up another. The same house, different year, another photograph, the same kitchen. Then I found one that made my stomach drop. It showed the kitchen exactly as it looked that Thanksgiving. The same refrigerator, the same cabinets, the same roasting pan. I was standing in the photograph. So was my brother. So was my sister. So was my friend. The photograph had been taken from the hallway. Nobody had been standing there. I turned it over. There was writing on the back. Thanksgiving night. I looked at my brother. He didn't say anything. I picked up another photograph. This one showed the back door. The curtains were closed. There was someone standing behind them. I couldn't see the face, just a dark shape. My brother took the photograph from me. We're leaving. We didn't take anything. We didn't check the rest of the box. We went upstairs, woke everyone, and left the house before sunrise. Nobody believed us completely. I can't blame them. By morning, the house looked normal. There was no wet footprint. The key was gone. The box was gone. Even the storage door was locked again. For the next few weeks, I tried to forget it. I almost succeeded. Then Thanksgiving came around again. I wasn't going back to that house. I stayed at my apartment. I didn't cook. I didn't decorate. I didn't even turn on the television. Around midnight, I heard something in my kitchen. A cabinet opening, then closing. I stayed in bed. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps, slow, careful. They stopped outside my bedroom. I held my breath. Nothing happened. Then I heard a very quiet voice. Not my voice. Not anyone I knew. I already checked upstairs. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I found something outside my bedroom door. A small cardboard box. I didn't touch it. I called my brother. He came over. We stood there looking at it. Finally, he opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It showed my apartment. The picture had clearly been taken from inside my bedroom. I was asleep in the bed. My brother was standing beside me, but the photograph had been taken during the night. And I knew neither of us had taken it. There was one other thing in the picture. A hand was visible at the edge of the frame. It was resting on my shoulder. I never found out who took that photograph. I never found out who had been standing behind the curtain. I never found out why those photographs existed. But there's one detail I can't explain. The photograph of my apartment was dated the night before I found it. And written on the back were 3 words. Next Thanksgiving, upstairs. I haven't spent Thanksgiving inside my own apartment since. I don't know whether someone is playing an elaborate prank on me, whether those photographs were somehow staged, or whether there's a completely ordinary explanation I've never found. But every Thanksgiving, I still check the hallway before I go to sleep. And every year, without fail, I find one thing in my kitchen that I know I didn't put there. A clean fork. Always in a different place. I still don't know who was sitting at our Thanksgiving table after everyone went upstairs. What scares me most is that I heard the chair move before I found the recording. I was the last person downstairs that night. Everyone else had gone to bed, and I was standing in the kitchen putting leftovers into containers when I heard a slow scrape from the dining room. Not a crash, not a bump. A chair being pulled backward across the floor. I froze with the refrigerator door open. For a few seconds, I didn't move. Then I heard someone whisper, very quietly, "Are you done?" I slammed the refrigerator shut. Nobody was supposed to be downstairs. Thanksgiving had started normally. My family had come over early. We had eaten too much, argued about nothing important, watched football, and spent several hours sitting around the table. There were 6 of us. I remember that because I set 6 plates, 6 forks, 6 glasses. I remember counting them because my brother joked that I was taking the table too seriously. After dinner, everyone moved into the living room. Later, my sister and my brother went upstairs to sleep, and my roommate went to bed in the guest room. I stayed downstairs because I wanted to clean up before going to sleep. That was when the chair moved. I walked slowly into the dining room. Every chair was where I remembered leaving it, except one. The chair at the far end of the table was pulled out about a foot. I stood there staring at it. Then I heard a small sound behind me. A plate clinked. I turned around so quickly that I nearly slipped. Nothing. The kitchen was empty. I checked the living room. Empty. I checked the hallway. Empty. I even went upstairs and opened the bathroom door because I suddenly had the stupid thought that someone might be hiding in there. Nobody. When I came back downstairs, the chair was pushed in. I didn't touch it. I told myself I had probably forgotten where I'd left it. That explanation lasted about 10 minutes. I was taking the trash outside when my phone rang. It was my roommate. I answered. "Hey." There was silence. Then I heard breathing. I frowned. "Hello?" Nothing. I checked the screen. It was definitely my roommate's number. Then very softly, I heard my own voice say, "Don't go outside." I stopped. I didn't recognize the recording at first because it sounded exactly like me, but quieter. Then the call disconnected. I immediately called my roommate back. He answered after 2 rings. "What? Did you just call me?" "No." I looked at my phone. The call history showed an incoming call from him. "I just got a call from your number." He laughed. "I've been upstairs for like an hour." I didn't tell him what I'd heard. I just said, "Never mind." Then I heard something hit the front door. 3 sharp knocks. My roommate went silent. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Yeah." Another 3 knocks. Neither of us moved. I walked toward the door and looked through the peephole. Nobody. The porch was empty. The yard was dark. I opened the door anyway. Cold air came in. There was nothing outside. No footsteps, no car pulling away. Nothing. I closed the door and locked it. That's when I noticed something on the floor. A small white envelope. It hadn't been there before. My first thought was that someone had slipped it underneath the door, but the envelope was sitting about 3 feet inside the house. I picked it up. There was no writing on it. Inside was a small digital voice recorder. I didn't recognize it. My hands were already shaking when I pressed play.
At first, all I heard was static, then a clock ticking, then dishes clinking, then my own voice. Everyone's upstairs. I stopped the recording. I stared at the device. I hadn't said those words yet. At least I didn't think I had. I pressed play again. My voice continued. I heard the chair again. Then there was a long pause. A chair scraped across the floor, exactly the same sound I'd heard earlier. Then my voice whispered, "Someone is sitting at the table." I dropped the recorder. I didn't want to hear anything else. I went upstairs and woke my roommate. He was annoyed until he saw my face. "What happened?" I showed him the recorder. He listened to the first few seconds, then he looked at me. "Where did you get this?" "It was under the door." He shook his head. "That's not possible." "I know." We checked the house together. Every room, every closet, under the beds, the basement. Nothing. Eventually, we convinced ourselves that someone had been playing a prank.
That explanation made more sense than anything else. We locked the doors again. My roommate stayed awake with me for another 20 minutes. Then he said, "I'm going to sleep. Don't play that thing again." I agreed. I went downstairs alone. I didn't want to admit it, but I was embarrassed. I felt stupid. I started cleaning again. Then the kitchen light switched on by itself. I jumped. The switch was across the room. I stared at it. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow. One step. Pause. Another step. I grabbed my phone. "Are you awake?" I called. No answer. The footsteps continued. I walked toward the stairs. Then they stopped. I waited. Nothing. I took one step upward. My phone rang. I nearly threw it. The screen showed my own number. I answered without thinking. For 3 seconds, there was only static. Then I heard myself whisper, "Don't go upstairs." I hung up. Immediately, something slammed against the floor above me. I ran. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember reaching the living room and standing there, breathing hard. My roommate came downstairs a minute later. "What happened?" "I don't know." He looked past me toward the stairs. Then he noticed something. "Where's the recorder?" I looked at the coffee table. It was gone. We searched everywhere. Nothing. Then my roommate pointed toward the dining room. The recorder was sitting in the middle of the table. Neither of us had put it there. He picked it up. There was a new recording. The timestamp was only a few seconds old. He pressed play. This time I heard my roommate's voice. "Where's the recorder?" Then my own voice answered. "On the table." My roommate stared at me. I stared at him. Neither of us spoke. Because at that exact moment, the chair at the end of the table slowly moved backward. We both saw it. There was no person sitting in it, but the chair moved, just a few inches, then stopped. My roommate whispered, "We're leaving." We grabbed our coats. Before we reached the front door, the recorder started playing by itself. My voice came through the speaker. "I should have left already." Then another voice whispered something underneath it. I couldn't understand the words. We opened the door. The porch light came on. Nobody was outside. We left anyway. We sat in the car for almost an hour before either of us felt comfortable going back inside. Eventually, we called my brother and told him something had happened. He came downstairs, looked around, and laughed at us, not cruelly. He genuinely thought we'd scared ourselves. Then he picked up the recorder. "What is this?" I told him not to press play. He did. The recording started, static, then dishes, then my voice. "Everyone's upstairs." My brother frowned. "That's weird." Then the recording continued. This time, there was a sound none of us had heard before. A chair scraping. Then someone whispered, "There's supposed to be 7. We all went quiet. My brother looked at the table. There were 6 places set. He counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then he looked at me. "Did you set another one earlier?" "No." He walked into the kitchen. I followed. There was a plate sitting beside the sink. A fork was beside it. A glass was beside that. All three were wet. I knew exactly what that meant. They had been washed, but I had only washed 6 plates, 6 forks, 6 glasses. My brother picked up the plate. There was a faint lipstick mark on the rim. Nobody at dinner had been wearing lipstick. We didn't say anything. We just left the kitchen. The next morning, everything looked normal. The recorder was gone. Nobody could find it. We eventually convinced ourselves that someone had entered the house as a prank, although we couldn't explain how. Weeks passed. I almost stopped thinking about Thanksgiving. Then I was cleaning old photos on my phone. I found one from dinner. It was a picture I had taken before everyone sat down. I zoomed in on the table. 6 people were visible around it. 6 plates, 6 glasses. Then I noticed something behind the chair at the far end, a reflection in the dark window. It looked like someone was sitting there. I couldn't see a face, just the outline of a person. I enlarged the picture until it became blurry. Then I noticed the strangest part. The reflection wasn't wearing the clothes anyone at dinner had worn. It was wearing a dark sweater. I didn't tell anyone. I deleted the picture, or at least I thought I did. 2 months later, I found the same photo attached to a message from my own phone number. There was no text, just the picture. And beneath it was an audio file. I didn't open it. I still haven't. But the file name is what keeps me awake. It says, Thanksgiving next year. And the date on the file is already set for Thanksgiving. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know who made the recording. I don't know who was reflected in that window. And I don't know why there were 7 places in the house when only 6 of us were there. But I do know one thing. I haven't hosted Thanksgiving since. I don't even eat at a table anymore. Because every November around the same time, I hear a chair scrape somewhere in my apartment. And last year, for the first time, I heard a second sound afterward, a fork being placed beside a plate.